Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. We are worldwide today for our webinar, United CPM Scheduling with Uniting. I got to get it right. CPM Scheduling with LPS, presented by our friends at Touchplan. My name is Eileen Goldberg with LCI, and I'll be your moderator today. So there's a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to go over before we get started. The first is this is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be available on the LCI Congress website, lcicongress.org/2024. When you see a red asterisk to the left of the Touchplan logo, click on the logo and you will go directly to the recording. You'll see the long skinny box on the right-hand side of your screen. That's the control panel. There's a red arrow to the left of that box. That's the minimization and maximization arrow for the control panel. Please feel free to use that so you can view the presentation more closely. At the bottom of your control panel, you'll see the questions box. If you have any questions, please put them in that box. They'll be answered at the end of the presentation. Again, if they reference a particular topic or subject or a particular area, please put that in the question as well so we can answer your question appropriately. We're also going to be doing a quick plus delta at the end of the presentation. And for those of you who are not familiar with the term, pluses are things you thought added value to the presentation, and deltas are things you think we should change to add more value to the presentation. In the spirit of continuous improvement, I know that our friends at Touchplan want to know exactly what you want to hear and things that they'd be able to change to improve their webinar. So again, just a quick recap, this is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be available on our Congress website, lcicongress.org/2024. When you see a red asterisk to the left of the Touchplan logo, click on the logo, you'll go directly to the recording. You'll see the control panel with the minimization and maximization arrow and the questions box. Any questions that you have should go in the box. They'll be answered at the end, and be thinking about those plus deltas as we go through in that feedback. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Carly. Thanks, Carly.
Thanks, Eileen. Hi, everyone. So my name is Carly. I work at Touchplan, and I'm very happy to be moderating or presenting this panel today. So our topic, so everyone's on the same page as what we're discussing, is uniting CPM scheduling with LPS. First things first, we want to make sure everyone knows what Touchplan is, so we're all on the same page here. So Touchplan is a cloud-based real-time platform for general contractors and specialty contractor collaboration. So it helps prevent schedule and budget slip and ensure job safety because it's a collaborative planning environment for everyone to use, and it also provides owners the instant insight they need to track progress and hopefully anticipate any problems. So the idea is that real-time collaboration helps us all stay on the same page. Now, without further ado, I want to make sure I present or introduce my co-panelist here today, Joe. Joe, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, thanks, Carly, and hey, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are, like Eileen said. My name is Joe Drummond. I'm an assistant project manager here at Richard Group. We're a general contracting firm based out of Chicago, Illinois, and we are across the nation now with the projects that we are executing. We do a bunch of stuff for the Department of Veterans Affairs, as well as DoD, other public clients, and then we're transitioning to the private sector here as well. For me, myself, I'm relatively new to the construction industry. I graduated from West Point in 2015, served 8.5 years in the Army, and then came here and joined this incredible team at Richard Group about a year or so ago. And really thankful with everything that's happened in the past year. Top of that list being our integration and partnership now with Touchplan. So yeah, that's the down and dirty, Carly.
Awesome. So let's get started there. Can you tell us a little bit about the lean journey that Richard Group went through, and particularly how you guys ended up deciding to partner with Touchplan?
Yeah, absolutely. So being a general contractor that's growing extremely fast, in the past year and a half, we've grown from about 30 employees to now about 130 employees. And we're on the cusp of transitioning from small business to large business here starting next year based off just our average revenue. So it's been a very fast startup of growth in the past year and a half to 2 years. With that, we realized that, hey, we need to modernize our approach to scheduling. We need to modernize our approach to tracking on site and putting work in place and collaborating with our subcontractors. So we knew we had to get out of spreadsheets. We had to get into something that, thinks and is smarter, faster, leaner. and emphasizes collaboration. So we went through a pretty wide array of demos and research, explored all of the options we think that are out there, and determined that Touchplan is the best partner for us to explode in our next phase of growth.
Awesome, and we are very happy to be your partners in this journey. Now to get into the topic of the webinar a little bit more. You know this, and a lot of our teams say the same thing, but maintaining alignment between your master schedule and what's actually happening out in the field is critical throughout the project. It helps make sure we're actually hitting our targets and ensure that we're successful in our goals. So how has Touchplan helped you ensure this alignment between the master schedule and also the production plan, what's actually happening out in the field?
Yeah, just to, a little bit of before and after here. So before, our master schedule, with our top client being, like I said, those public entities and the VA and USACE and whatnot, we have a contractual obligation for our CPM schedule being an XCR produced file. And of course, industry standard, we use P6, and we use a combination of in-house, OPC, and third-party consultants to help manage that baseline schedule. Before then, there's this disconnect between that schedule and then this translation into what actually occurs on site, what actually happens putting work in place that was managed previously in an Excel document. And it might work for like the first month, but then very quickly those documents start to deviate heavily from each other, and what's actually happening on site is not what's being communicated very well to the client via the baseline CPM schedule. And then, of course, the home office doesn't see what progress is made, so revenue and billing forecasts can be accurate. All of those disparate things being held in different places, things just break very, very easily. Putting the two together while still maintaining a level of separation so then streams aren't crossed, that was our biggest need. And what Touchplan's lean platform allowed us to do is take that XCR file produced either by a third-party consultant or our in-house schedulers and OPC, integrate that directly into the Touchplan platform, and then from there take those top-line activities, break them up into work package tasks, and schedule collaboratively with our subcontractors using a pull planning methodology to accomplish those tasks, activities, and stay on schedule. So that integration has been crucial for us, both for communicating with our subcontractors, communicating with the client, and then the project team looking back to the home office to be able to provide updates of how we're progressing the project as a whole.
Yeah, and I feel like we hear that all the time. It's why we developed the master schedule synchronization in the first place. It's really key to keep those two systems aligned and synced with the information we have from them. Can you speak a little bit about how using this integration with Touchplan and P6 has helped improve the accuracy of your master schedule and the production plans with that sort of information transfer?
Yeah, absolutely. So instead of needing to translate activities down into an Excel-based schedule or a sticky note-based schedule on a wall or whatever it is, instead of needing to translate and rework or manually recreate those activities, now it's just an automatic upload of that XCR. And so the truth is there. The truth is there when you start actually doing your task planning, which is huge. It helps alleviate mistakes. It also helps keep the working team, our subcontractors, our superintendents, our foremen, everybody in that project team on site. It helps them plan their task implementation, their actual putting work in place, helps them plan that with the structure and the bones of that original schedule. So it helps in that direction. So from master schedule to task planning. But then the other direction, it's extremely helpful too, because since those tasks are nested within the activities, if those tasks push to the right, or hey, we win days and we pull things to the left, which is obviously ideal, and that's what we're actually seeing on site. Well, because it's nested within the overarching activity, it's very easy to see that look back at then the OPC or P6 schedule and adjust that activity and see what's happening to the master schedule. So the integration is seamless, and it's starting to really bear its fruit in our overall productivity on the site.
Yeah, I feel like I talk about this with my teams all the time of how the master schedule is more the framework or the bumper lanes for which we're actually doing that production plan with the team. And so having it in mind helps us make sure is there anything we need to update with a master schedule, or are we beating that and therefore updating it in a more positive way? So we're all using the right planning information. I always say this helps us make more informed planning decisions based on the most up-to-date information.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that's been extremely helpful for us is because the framework of Touchplan is there and the lean methodology is baked in to the software, what benefit we're seeing on site is the conversations down into the weeds of work packages, or really just crew sizes for those work packages. It's happening well in advance of when it used to. So instead of it being a, hey, we're updating the 3-week look ahead, let's look at crew sizes for the next 3 weeks, our teams on site are looking 2 to 3 months ahead and already having the conversations of what crew sizes are necessary for these tasks. And that's been huge, because then with us working in the healthcare industry with the VA a lot, access can flow, ebb and flow. We might have access one day, we might not have access the next day, but we've already had the conversations of what crews are required for those tasks. And so when access is granted for a particular area, even if it wasn't originally planned to be executed that week, it's a very quick conversation with the subcontractor of, hey, we have this opportunity. Can you support with the crew size we discussed already? And we just simply reference Touchplan to do that. And then we have that conversation and can quickly react with flexibility and execute. And that wasn't happening before. And Touchplan has been able to give us that capability.
Allowing for those sort of real-time reactions. Let's talk a little bit about sort of the balance of the high-level oversight you need with your CPM schedule, which, like you said, you have in-house, you have consultants, OPC, a lot of different players in that realm. How do you balance that high-level oversight with the collaborative and sort of daily execution focus that the last planner system sort of requires? Like you were just speaking about how it gets you into the crew sizes, but how do you find your team sort of balancing it? Is having them both in line really helps with communication there?
Yeah, what allows us to do the high level master schedule, you touched on with the word the bones. You know, I see it as really as the start point and end point of your journey. So if you think about it as, let's say you're going from, you know, where I am in Chicago and you're driving up to Madison, Wisconsin, that's your activity. You know, drive from Chicago, start in Chicago, end in Madison. Great. But how you get there are a bunch of different routes, and those routes can be influenced by weather, it can be influenced by traffic, it can be influenced by, hey, I kind of just want to go, you know, take a stop in Wisconsin Dells. You know, there's a lot of different ways to get from Chicago to Madison, and those are your tasks. But in the end, you have to get to Madison. That's the approach we really take with our collaborative efforts in 3-week look ahead or short interval planning with Touchplan. The activities that come from your master schedule, that's where you start, where you finish, and of course a desired duration and end date. But then how you get there is based off of the collaboration that happens weekly in our subcontractor collaboration meetings, utilizing Touchplan. And so sequencing those events, identifying crew sizes, the actual path to completing the activity is all done through the lean methods that Touchplan allows us to execute.
It's all about that collaboration. It's the only way we're going to get there. Got to deal with the reality of things coming up that are outside of our control and learning to control the things we do control a little bit better.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through a specific project where you're utilizing sort of that CPM LPS process we just discussed? And what are some of the challenges you were able to overcome by putting this process in place on one of these projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a project in Battle Creek, Michigan, the VA facility there. It's part of the electronic health records modernization effort that the VA is executing across the country. And we have multiple jobs in the ERTRM program. And the Battle Creek example is one that has implemented Touchplan here in the past about 5 months, and really seen the benefit of it. The biggest thing has been the forecasting of crew sizes and allowing that conversation to influence and positively affect the flexibility of execution. So, for example, just this past month in Battle Creek, the team unfortunately lost access to a building that was scheduled to be worked in the month of September. It's been scheduled since the outset of the project. Everything was coordinated, everything was ready, but then access to certain surgical wing of the building. There were some emergency surgeries that needed to happen. Veterans had to get some emergency health care. So that access was turned off. Thankfully, there was already, there were already tasks planned for the month of October that the team could very easily adjust, pull forward into September because all the coordination with the subs had happened, and put that work in place to continue driving the overall schedule and not lose days along the critical path. And it's all because that flexibility was prepared for. That's what Touchplan allowed us to do. And consequently, the team had the biggest month financially in company history, while also, most importantly, in my opinion, maintaining scheduled progress to still deliver the overall project by the completion date. So it's all a testament to that collaboration between the team and the subcontractors and the integration between the master schedule and the short interval planning that Touchplan allows.
Awesome. It's always great to hear when you're able to deal with some pretty major impacts in a way that you don't actually see the impacts.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about communication between what's happening with the field team to sort of the back office. How has maybe your schedulers found that improved communication in terms of getting the information from what's happening in the field? Are they the ones who are also in Touchplan, or are they sort of working with the teams getting the information from Touchplan? How are you seeing that communication from the schedulers and the project team?
Yeah, so as we're growing as a company, we don't have a project controls department yet. I'm actually kind of leading that and building our project controls department. Right now we're over department of one. So I actually do all of the master schedule maintenance for the company until it comes time to produce that master schedule update, which we leverage third-party consultants to do that for our clients. But throughout the month, I maintain the master schedules on behalf of the clients. So for me, it's huge to communicate with the teams on almost a daily basis, at least 3 times a week, to see how their tasks are progressing relative to the activities that were planned over the course of the month. So with Battle Creek as an example, ever since we've instituted Touchplan with them, that communication between myself and the team is just faster. It's cleaner. They don't have to go and check to see if something's complete. They already know. And that communication flow then becomes a lot more efficient, more accurate, which maintains the schedule more accurately. And before you know it, we have full visibility back in the home office of how exactly the team is performing day over day, week over week, as opposed to needing to wait for the third-party consultant to produce the update at the end of the month.
Probably also makes it a little bit easier as a department of one to get all that information from different projects if they're all sort of using Touchplan or starting to pick up Touchplan as the projects come on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the biggest efficiency that's gained there is when I require an update or it's time to collaborate between myself and the project teams, the teams are all over it. They know all the information. We've gotten into a rhythm where we understand what the upstairs elements of our company need to see, and then the teams know that, and all that data is readily available just by using the Touchplan through look ahead scheduling. So it's all there at their fingertips, which is most important. Again, in my opinion, it's all about putting the work in place, and it's driving that. And the visibility that the team has then flows I guess up the chain, so then the visibility is seen at the highest level here in the company.
Awesome. Now, I have one last question for you, and then we can turn it over to questions from the audience. But in your opinion, what's sort of the one thing about Touchplan that everyone listening today should take away from this presentation? If there was sort of one main thing you would want people to take away from this?
Yeah, I think the one thing is actually potentially a little surprising. I've touched on the collaboration, I've touched on the visibility, I've touched on the efficiency, all that stuff. But I actually think the one big thing is adoption. Adoption is, in my opinion, the most important aspect of a software or any tool. If the tool can have all the bells and whistles, a tool can look really cool, it can say it can do all this stuff, it can, maybe even do all those things, but if it's not adopted by the user, then it's ineffective. What Touchplan, the Feather and Touchplan's cap is, it is easy to implement because superintendents and subcontractors buy into it and they adopt it, and then it's executed, and then the people are the ones that are driving the train of the project team. No matter what tool they use, the people are the ones that are most important. And so if the people aren't willing to adopt something, then like I said, it doesn't matter how nice the tool looks in a slide deck, it's an ineffective tool. Our project teams have adopted Touchplan, and they've adopted it out of just belief in the system and the support that the team at Touchplan provides in getting them all onboarded. It's been pretty remarkable. So the one thing to take away for Touchplan is your team will adopt it. Once they experience it, once they see it, they will adopt it because they'll see the benefit of it right away.
Well, that's great to hear from my perspective as well, because I'm on the customer success team. So it's me and my team who are working to help teams get kicked off and adopt things. So it's really great to hear when teams from their own mouths say, hey, this was a really easy process and we're all in. So I love to hear that. Alrighty, we got a couple minutes left here. Eileen, I know you're the one who has any questions coming through. Are there any that have come through that we should start with?
Absolutely. I also want to remind people that in the questions box, now is the time for the plus deltas and the feedback. For those of you who weren't familiar and weren't on the beginning of the webinar, pluses are things you thought added value to the presentation. Deltas are things you think we should change to add more value to the presentation. Let's grab the first question. Do you use the export from Touchplan to P6 function to progress your master schedule? If so, do you see the value in using this versus progressing Touchplan and P6 separately?
It's a great question. So we have made the choice to actually not do that. We use the import from P6 into Touchplan to create those bones, but we've chosen as a company policy to not then export back into P6 because we want to keep those separate enough. It's easy to have the Touchplan portion pulled up on one side and then manually choose to progress activities in the master schedule. Big reason why we chose to do that is because we want the 3-week look ahead or short interval. We're actually looking, like I said, 2 to 3 months out. We want that to really live. We want that to breathe. We want that to move and be flexible. We don't want the master schedule to shift unless we deliberately choose to do so, because that's our contractual document. So we have not moved from Touchplan or pushed from Touchplan to OPC, but we are leveraging the import function from OPC to Touchplan.
I feel like I see that a lot with the teams, where some teams choose to export the information and do that mass update, and some teams want that control. Like you said, you want to make it really intentional with what you're updating in P6. So they might pull the Gantt chart and use that as the reference doc to make updates. Or like you said, just have Touchplan open as you're making those updates and sort of move through the plan that way.
Yeah, I can see depending on your client, I can see depending on your client and depending on the type of work or the size of the project, I could see that being extremely beneficial. With our client being the government, our schedules being 5,000 lines, our master schedules are 3,000 to 5,000 lines. Pushing from Touchplan to or OPC or P6, yeah, it could just cause some miscommunication and issues with our contractual obligations.
And that's why you've sort of settled on one that's a more intentional choice. And I think that's great, because I think it really depends on, like you said, the project and finding the way that works best for you.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's see, we have a whole bunch of questions that came in. How about using the step functionality in P6?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So steps, very effective in P6. It's a great way to do it when you're getting into your, your task planning, and it is a nice way to just integrate it, directly into your single platform. So totally see the benefit there. We've found that Touchplan's user friendliness and visual appeal and how it harkens back to sticky notes on the wall, it's something that our teammates, both in the field here in Richard Group and our subcontractors that we partner with, they can wrap their heads around it a lot faster. And so the collaboration is streamlined, it's instantaneous, and it communicates therefore a lot more efficiently and effectively. So steps is great, but we don't use steps because we want to emphasize the collaboration on site.
Okay, we do have a couple more minutes for questions. If for some reason we don't get to your questions are sent directly to the presenter, so they will be able to follow up with you after the webinar. Our next question is, how often do you import from P6 to Touchplan for a typical project?
Yeah, that's a good question too. And it kind of depends a little bit, but our method right now is on a monthly basis, because when we update activity percent completes and actualize in the monthly updates, that gets blessed off on during the pay application process with our clients. Well, then at that point, we haven't re-baselined necessarily, but we do have a solid status of the master schedule. From there, import into Touchplan. Now we know that those activities are locked and loaded, ready to be tasked. Now, most of the time, it's very similar to the previous month, but we know we're dealing with the most up-to-date activity dates to then plan or refine our tasks for that current month.
Okay, Joe, this one is for you. We had another exhibitor webinar where this person said that they heard to get away from sticky notes. What do you think about that, and how does that work with Touchplan and your experience with the Richard Group?
Yeah, I'm curious what the reasoning or the more context was about getting away from sticky notes. I think the principles of sticky notes should be maintained. Getting away from the actual physical sticky notes makes a lot of sense to me, because they can fall off the wall, they can be, easily, honestly, altered. They could be lost if they, wind blows through your trailer or something. But the principle of a sticky note makes a lot of sense, because it's so easy. Just write a task down, put it on a color that corresponds with the subcontractor, put your crew size, and then stick it where it needs to go in sequence on a schedule. And you can move it around. And that's the beauty of the sticky note process, is you can just move things around so easily. But there's the drawback of, what if you lose a sticky note, So keeping that principle and simply putting it in a digital platform, in my opinion, is the solution. You have all the benefits of sticky note collaboration, well, the drawback of having to write it out manually or potentially, lose the physical material.
Okay, let's see, we have time for one more question, so I'm going to go ahead and ask this. You may have already spoken to this. How do you manage any discrepancies that arise between the two systems?
So if by discrepancy you mean dates get pushed, I'll answer that scenario. So let's say you have, once you import your activities from P6, you have that umbrella duration for excavate, trench, or whatever, and then you have your tasks with that. If those tasks start to push or pull, push to the right or pull to the left, well, then there might be an update required for that activity. That then becomes a deliberate decision on the project team side to update the P6 OPC version of that activity to respond or correspond with what's in Touchplan. That's a deliberate decision that teams make on a weekly basis. If there's a discrepancy between the activities in Touchplan and the activities in OPC, like the actual content of them, not the durations of them, then that means that there might be something either broken in your OPC side of the house, like you've changed an activity or maybe you deleted or added a couple. And that's why we on a monthly basis do a new import of the master schedule into Touchplan. So we know we're looking at the most updated master schedule to then plan those tasks in Touchplan. Biggest thing again is it's a little bit of a shooter preference. It's up to how your company wants to handle it, but that's part of the reason why we don't push from Touchplan back into OPC. We only pull from OPC into Touchplan.
Well, we are out of time. We'd like to thank Carly from Touchplan and Joe from the Richard Group for presenting today, and all of you for attending. Again, this is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be available on our Congress website, lcicongress.org/2024. When you see a red asterisk to the left of the Touchplan logo, please click on that logo and you will go directly to the recording. Thanks again, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you on another webinar. Bye-bye.